Our next speaker is Nadine McNeil from Jamaica. She presents about yoga, ethnochoreology, bodily practices, matriarchal collectivizing memory. Please, Nadine.
Thank you. Before I begin, sort of to wake us up a bit or liven us up a bit, for those of us wearing glasses, we may want to remove those. And I'm just going to lead us through a little exercise. So just sitting, maybe coming towards the edges of our seats, placing our feet nice and flat on the ground. And we just want to rub our hands together, really creating some fire, some heat, some energy in those hands, making them nice and warm. And then we want to gently close our eyes and just cup those hands over the eyes and just feeling that heat and energy radiating from the hands into the eyes. The eyes are gently closed. And just taking a couple of deep breaths here, inhaling deeply through the nose and exhaling through the nose. Couple more deep breaths in and exhale everything out. One more deep inhalation and slowly and gently exhaling everything out. Now just taking the tips of our fingers and just tapping our foreheads, tapping that area around the eyes, tapping the chins, the cheeks, the nose, and then just slowly returning those hands to our laps. And when we're ready, just gently opening our eyes. How's that? Good? Great. Okay. I'm very excited to be here today, and as someone mentioned earlier on, I'm amazed at the connectivity of the presentations and how they flow. The time that we're living in is a very exciting one. I think nowhere has there been a greater surge of collective connectedness in how we face our fears and how we heal our wounds. Undoubtedly, our presence here today validates this. I sort of got on the yogic path, as it were, through my own life work, responding to traumas in just about all corners of the globe. And the more I saw and the more I stored, I realized that I had reached a crisis point when I needed to save myself in order to continue doing my work in the field. So that was more or less how yoga found me, or I found yoga. As a matter of interest, how many people here have a yogic practice in their lives? Oh, great. Excellent, excellent. Well, as we know, we all practice yoga, or I practice yoga mainly, or what pulled me towards it was to raise my levels of awareness. A troubled childhood, working in the field, what I found is that as my awareness rose, so did my consciousness. And when we're more conscious, we're able to make responsible choices, and that it ultimately leads to freedom. Talking about yoga ethnochoreology, essentially, it's a combination of working with, it's very practical, we'll do a little exercise at some point, but it's working with yoga, visualizing, and journaling. Having done some work with Danitza Anderson, forensic psychotherapist, who works with the Kolo, traditional Serbo-Croatian dance, one of the things that immediately struck me with working with the Kolo is its likeness to the chakra system. And one of the things that I immediately got and felt is that, any sort of healing that we take on happens in a circle. If we look at all of the presentations, we've seen the traditional dances, they all happen in a circle. So moving forward, practice, yoga ethnochoreology bridges many traditions due to the matriarchal healing collective memory practices. Nature, nurture, storytelling, witnessing, and patterned movement, like dancing the kolo, are all elements that comprise a social matriarchal society. Through my own experience, especially while studying yoga intensively in India, I saw where yoga could be the perfect technique to restore harmony and balance to disenfranchised and traumatized communities. Further, in promoting self-awareness, yoga also served as an integral step towards emerging from the collective and unconscious amnesia that women, especially in Western patriarchal societies, are entrenched. Funnily enough, I laughed as Marianne made a point about the reason that we're all at psychotherapy. I wondered if that's the reason we're all hitting the mats as well. And actually, I actually think they go hand in hand. Or my experience has been that there's so much work that we can do in therapy. I won't ask how many of us are in therapy, but there's a point at which you need to start to work what we're holding in our bodies, you know? For example, when I lived in Asia and Africa, it's fascinating that a lot of Asian women, African women, you get them in a posture, they squat, no problem. Us Western women, I think it took me 5 years to comfortably squat, because we hold many of our unresolved issues in our root chakra. And also, if we follow along Carolyn Mace, who talks about where our biography becomes our biologies, it's not surprising that we have so many colon issues, cervical issues, etc., etc. But I won't digress too much into that. So coming back to yoga ethnochoreology, this summer I decided to run an experiment working with a group, a Jamaica, Canadian-based initiative called TAP. TAP means a turnaround project, and this is going into inner city communities in Jamaica where we employ art, music, dance, poetry, painting, and yoga to empower these disenfranchised kids in the inner cities. At first, the powers that be on the TAP board, I had a bit of resistance because, you know, I don't think we want these children to do yoga. What will the local pastor say, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, after the first day of working with the kids with the yoga, I was absolutely blown away. When we did one of the breath retention exercises, one of the kids, he must have been about maybe 10, and he said he didn't like to hold his breath. And I said to him, well, why don't you like holding your breath? He says, because when he holds his breath, he feels afraid. And I said, well, what does feeling afraid feel like to you? Why do you feel afraid? He says, because he feels like he's going to die. And I says, well, what does death feel like to you? He says, well, I don't know, but I've lost 4 of my brothers and they've all gone to inner city violence. You know, so to be able to work with the kids so now he has a sense of awareness, a starting point from which he can then begin to heal his wounds. So we had several examples like that. Another example where I'm currently working in my old high school in Jamaica with the girls on the track team. We produced a 100 medal winner from the Olympics and Berlin, Shelley Ann Fraser, and one of the amazing things that she said when she was interviewed in Berlin is that she doesn't breathe through her mouth. She actually does nostril breathing. She practices yogic breath. So I was really excited to hear this, and I then took this to the coach of the school and said, you know, I'd love to do some volunteer work with the girls on the track team. Now, all of these girls are very fit. I mean, you know, they can run me out of the woodwork. But what is fascinating to me, again, that the girls love, is the meditative part, you know, sitting down, doing that breath work, lying in Shavasana. I mean, you know, every Tuesday I meet with 40 hyperactive girls, and you put them in Shavasana and you could hear a pin drop. And then they just center and they focus, and they take that into their running, into their families, into everything that they do. Speaking about yoga in Jamaica, For those who have some knowledge about Jamaica from the Western media, we have a complex pathology. We have one of the highest murder rates in the world. We also have some of the most churches per square foot in the world. You know, the general Jamaican stance on issues pertaining to sexuality has raised more than a few eyebrows in activist groups. Yet, our academic institutions, deeply rooted in the patriarchy, continue to churn out qualified females. And interestingly enough, a couple of years ago, we had a female prime minister, and suddenly the paper started to say, oh, you know, matriarchy is on the rise in Jamaica. And I went, oh dear. In any event, what is interesting within the Jamaican context, especially in terms of working with yoga and introducing yoga within the society, many of us, the teachers and instructors, are female. We do get resistance from the church out of fear. That said, it is growing. A few weeks ago, about 10 of us females, we managed to put together what we call the Shakti Love Fest. I teach at a studio called Shakti, Divine Feminine Energy. We did this love fest. Everyone said there's no way this thing is going to work. Well, we had men, women, and children turned out. The Prime Minister came out, said this is what we need. I mean, it was just incredible. I mean, we all kind of walked away going, wow, you know, what happens next? So, in spite of the strong influence of conventional Christianity, again, where we see mainly women in churches, things are shifting. We're looking for new ways in which to regain our culture, our history, our country. And again, I come back to yoga, where we use movement to create a healing movement. As I said earlier on, virtually every culture across the globe engages in some sort of movement of the body for meaning or significance, some sort of ritual rite of passage. Any sort of dance or movement, especially one conducted in a circle, is rooted in the feminine and is healing, transformational, and most important, authentic. Dance, like yoga, or yoga like dance, is naturally expressive. You know, it's interesting because many of the gurus, as we know, are predominantly male. However, my take on it is that they were, because yoga is maternal in nature, you look at the names of the postures, they all connect back to our ultimate mother, the Earth Mother. Am I on time? Oh, okay. You know, so and also, as I said, being authentic, we cannot hide when we move and when we dance. In nature, the wind becomes the song to which the trees dance. In yoga, breath becomes the rhythm to which the body sways. The real yoga, however, begins when we take our practice off our mats, into our hearts, and out into our worlds to do what we're doing here today. I'll stop there for a second. And does everyone have pen and paper? Okay, that's good. Who needs some pen and paper? Just a raise of hands. All right. Or you can actually use a card. If you've gotten it, you can write on the back of the card. That would be great. Okay, so we'll take about 5 minutes for this exercise. And what we're going to do is, again, sitting with both feet firmly on the mat or on the ground. Placing our hands in our laps with the palms face down. And just closing our eyes gently. And again, we're just going to take a few deep breaths in through the nose and exhaling through the nose. And mouth is slightly, lips slightly apart, tongues touching the roof of the mouth. And just breathing calmly, choosing a focus point either between our eyebrows or at our heart. Softening the shoulders as we inhale deeply through the nose and exhaling through the nose. If we're at our Agnya Chakra, third eye, you may see colors, shapes. Just allow whatever to come up to come to the surface. Just allowing our breaths to slowly and gently return to normal. And then gently opening the eyes only halfway, looking at the tips of the nose. And then opening them more fully. And now we'll just take about 2 minutes to just write whatever comes up. Probably have about 20 more seconds. Okay, we can stop writing. Great. That little exercise that we just shared for me is just a tiny example of all of the answers are within us, all of the healing is within us, and the most important part of the journaling process in the yoga ethnochoreology is that we then can look back and bear witness to what's going on. So, thank you.